Welcome to the Gals Guide to the Galaxy podcast, where a group of gals gather for you one cool thing around our topic of the month. Is it ancient history? Is it breaking news? Is it safe for work? Well, that's up to each gal. All we know is that...
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Welcome back. I'm Rebecca, and I'm joined by Leah, Katie, and Bonnie talking about our one cool animal thing. And Bonnie already talked about Virginia Woolf, but before we dive back in, let's get to know something random about our gal pals. So my random thing I'm going to ask is if you could breed two animals together, ethically, of course, or Island of Dr. Moreau, whatever.
Right.
It's
whatever gets it done.
Yeah, dealer's choice, whatever. What would you create? And I'll go last because I want to screen share a picture of mine.
Oh, dun, 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 dun. Why do I feel like Katie's going to have the best answer for this?
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're not? Oh, okay. You sure?
I think mine's going to be kind of lame, but I really just think that I would mix together cats and dogs.
Because you love them both. So.
I love them both, and there's different things I love about each of them. Like, I love how friendly and loving my dog is. My cats are too.
Yes.
But like, they're not going to follow me out of the room because they're like, it's probably not going to interest me. You're probably going to go do something lame, right?
Right. Independent ladies.
I'm an avid reader, and when you settle down with a good book that you just want to be into, sometimes you have puppy eyes that are like, why are you reading that? You could be petting me.
I know, right?
You can try to do both, but depends on your book holdage and all of that. So for reading purposes, I need just a nice cuddly cat on my lap, following me through the house and being interested in all the silly things I say all day. I need a dog.
There you go.
Like a really cute mix, though, not like, what was that cartoon TV show where it was like one side of it was a cat dog, where one side was the cat and one side was the dog.
And there's no butt.
Right.
Yeah.
Disturbing.
Although if that's a pet that doesn't poop.
Oh, now that does have its own benefits, though, right there. Oh, too fun. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Bonnie, do you have one?
Oh, I'm still getting over the cat dog. How the system works.
It's like
I would probably mix anything with a freaking unicorn. Like anything with the unicorn.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know until like a year or two ago that narwhals were like real. I thought it was a fake thing.
And it's their tooth.
Yeah, it's their tooth. So it'd probably have to be something mixed with like a narwhal, because anything with like a unicorn horn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could mix ponies with a narwhal and get an actual little unicorn. Like,
right? Exactly.
Could be land and sea animal, or are you just envisioning one or the other?
Well, if you mix it again with like some kind of winged creature, then you get Pegasus unicorn.
Pegasus.
So there you go.
Exactly.
Right. Mixed with an eagle.
There you go. Well, supposedly that's where the mythology of dragons came from, of snakes and birds. The idea of land and air combined together made the mythical creature of the dragon. So I'm totally down with any kind of Pegasus. My two current favorite right now are unicorns. I'm like obsessed with unicorns. The idea that they're magical and they're probably jerks, and that they're the national animal of Scotland, actually a thing. And I've always loved llamas. I've been like obsessed with llamas. I think they're adorable. Like llamas, you can't ride them. And I do love riding horses. So I think if you bred together a unicorn and a llama, I could ride it and it would be fluffy and soft and it would spit. Because my favorite animals are animals that spit for self-defense, like llamas and ostriches and camels.
I feel like that would look like a Dr. Seuss animal. Like
I'd be okay with that. So big poof with a horn. That is magical. That would be mine. Rebecca, what is yours? And I just can't wait for the screen share.
Let's see if I can just bring them up for you.
Come on, trusty interwebs.
Yeah. Hold on a second.
think I'm gonna need more margarita for this.
Oh, here it is. Okay. So can you see the magical
Oh my
snail?
goodness.
My God.
Cat snail?
They're snail cats.
Snail cats.
I have one that's this
Wow.
one here. I don't know if you can see my little cursor on it.
Oh,
That has been
goodness.
my Facebook profile picture a few
So
times.
cute. Yeah. Oh, the dog.
Uh,
Oh, wait, no, that's a goat.
There's like other snail animals. I think this is like snail animals. Yeah,
Gotcha.
so that's like I
Like
don't know.
cat snails. Oh,
Snail, snail.
oh my
Some of them.
goodness.
That's a cute one, but I don't know if that's really a medieval picture. I think that's because cats like look like kind of a cat, but like they don't know. Except this one looks pretty cat-like.
Right.
Um,
That I've
but yeah,
never
it was
seen these
on.
before. Oh my
It's
God.
on. It's on like a BuzzFeed link. It's like medieval cats or something like that. I don't know. It's from a few years ago. When I feel down, that's what I go to.
There you go. That's your happy place. I like
Snail
that.
cat. But this is actually like, as far as I know, this is like really a medieval drawing that was like in an illustrated book. So I don't know. I looked it up at one point what it means. I already forgot what it means. So
That's fine.
I think it's probably Christian religious something or other medieval times. You know, they had all these like everything was
Right.
somehow something, but
Some
yeah,
kind of
so
mythic meaning, maybe, or something like that. I don't know. I know
yeah,
my cat
so
always curls up. I mean, you know, I call her a little loaf of cat. She's like a little, you know, potato loaf.
yeah, that's my hybrid cat snail. Snail cat.
Fantastic.
And I think the BuzzFeed called them Snats or something like that.
Snats.
So I don't know if
Yes.
that's really a thing. Actually, maybe it'll tell me a look if it tells me what it's about.
Right.
What are
Otherwise,
they
it would be
called
like
about?
kales.
Just quickly if it comes up.
Kales or snats.
Well,
BuzzFeed
if I
can't even
figure it
get
out
to the
before the
bottom of the
next.
mystery.
I know. I know. I think I went down that rabbit hole at some point. I'm sure I did. But anyway, I will look it up again if I can find it between this and the next episode.
There you go. That's also why we have show notes.
Yeah, I'll share them with everyone. I didn't realize this was going to be like the question I was going to ask and answer. Although maybe I thought it was, but I didn't think it was going to go that deep. So
You are good. Well, what is your
yeah.
one cool animal thing, darling?
All right. So my one cool animal thing, and I'll screen share her picture if that's all right with everybody.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Thank you, internet, and your awesome. Okay. So this is Mollie Beattie. You see her over here.
Oh,
And
awesome.
she is the first woman to serve as the head of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And I was trying to find like specific stats about what that industry was like, because she was appointed by President Bill Clinton in 1993.
Gotcha.
Served until 1996, and I'll go into like her history a little bit in a minute. But the closest I could find is that it's just a male-dominated industry, fish and wildlife, as an industry, like forestry, hunting, all that kind of stuff. And it was even one of the interesting things I found that I wasn't really going to go into, but I thought but now that I'm talking about it, was that in this one study I read, it was like women look at least in forestry, women look at it as a whole picture, and they look at like the whole environment of the forest that they're working in, and then men tend to focus on more like the economy of it and like what trees they have to cut down to make money. And so it's kind of an interesting mix of and so that was like, that study was, I don't know, that study really struck me as interesting. It's not necessarily, but it does relate to her, because that became like her way of approaching it was, let's protect our environment, and then we'll be able to protect our animals.
Yeah.
And
so she was approaching it from a different perspective than previously really even totally being done.
Right. And so I am going to go. Are you seeing my show notes now?
Yes, we are. Still seeing your screen share.
All right.
Look at you
I didn't
with
know
all
if it
those
was
beautiful
going to go.
notes.
I didn't know if it would just the like the tab or whatever. Anyway. All right. So I'll just so now you can't see my picture of her, but I'll show her again at the end. So All right, so she was born on April 27. We were just talking about this before we started. April 27, 1947. So her birthday just recently passed, and she was born in New York suburb of Glen Cove. I think that's Long Island area.
Gotcha.
Then in 1968, she graduated with her bachelor's in philosophy, and then about 10 years later, or 11 years later, she earned a master's in forestry in 79. And then and I had where she went to school, but I guess it's not super important. But anyway, but then in the early 80s, she was a program director and lands manager for the Wyndham Foundation, which is a private nonprofit organization concerned with issues facing Vermont. So it's in most of her career, she was in Vermont.
Oh,
Then,
gotcha.
then from 85 to 89, she was Vermont's Commissioner of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. And I think it was 89 to 90, she was the Deputy Secretary of Vermont's Agency of Natural Resources. Then from 90 to 93, she was back in private, working as an executive director of the Richard A. Snelling Center for Government in Vermont, which is a public policy institute. And in that time, she also earned her master's in public administration from Harvard University in 1991.
Wow.
She has 2 masters and a bachelor's, and then President, like I said earlier, President Clinton nominated her or whatever, appointed her to the head of Fish and Wildlife in 93. She served there until June of 96. Unfortunately, she was diagnosed with brain cancer around that time.
Aww.
And passed away June 27, 1996.
Oh, wow.
She was only 49 years old.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. But even though she didn't get to live a full life as far as the decades, she had a lot of accomplishments along the way. So,
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, in schooling and education alone.
Yeah.
Good on her.
Yeah. And so, for instance, like even prior to Fish and Wildlife, she co-authored a book about managing woodlots in private ownership. And I don't know when the first edition came out, but the second edition came out like right before she started, I think, in 93, so the same year she started at the Fish and Wildlife Service. And she really focused on, and I from what I read, it was very well known in at least in New England among the forestry industry. So it was very well respected as a take on how the private public partnerships between people who own their own lands, but also the conservation efforts that they need to make even as private owners.
Because whatever they put in the water goes to other people and it goes into the world. So, yes.
And any effects they have on their ecosystems, including the animal. I mean, that's why I'm talking about her, because the animals, obviously. But
right. Yeah.
But everything is, like Leah said, everything's interconnected. And she took a similar approach when she was at Fish and Wildlife. And one thing that I thought was interesting that I found about her was that, let's see, where is that? Well, somewhere in my notes I have that she was, that her approach was respected by other conservationists, which it was kind of interesting to me just because I can only imagine what it would have been like, even though this, 20 plus years ago. I'm just thinking, math. Oh, my math skills are
the
not.
90s were 10 years ago. What are you talking about?
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, I was like, how is that? Is that even right? Yeah, 24 more than, so since the 90s, I can't imagine what it would have been like to be like a woman in a field that's very male dominated.
Yeah.
I think now it's a little better, because
we want to hope it is anyway.
Yeah, and like back to the article I mentioned earlier, like the industry itself has been making some strides, at least to employ more women in the workplace for forestry, but it's just still not. But because it's been a male-dominated industry, because it was for so long, it's not. It's still not easy to break into that as a woman. And maybe now it's a little better, because I think the article I read was from maybe like 10 years ago or something. So I was just trying to find more information about when she was in the field.
Right. What was her time like? Yeah.
Yeah. What was her time like? But I think that article might not even be that long ago. I don't know. But anyway, so she was, So let's see where I have like all her accomplishments. Okay, so according to her profile on U.S. Fish and Wildlife website, even in her short time as the head of Fish and Wildlife Service, 15 national wildlife refuges were added. More than 100 habitat conservation plans were signed with private landowners.
Cool.
And the gray wolf was reintroduced into the Northern Rocky Mountains.
The gray wolf. It's like the Virginia wolf, but different.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, maybe we'll have like some kind of wolf connection here today.
I'm gonna have to lie on mine to make there be one.
Yeah, so you got no pressure for the other podcasters.
Katie, you and I gotta get on
it. And I have a quote that says, one acquaintance, this is from Fish and Wildlife's bio of her, one acquaintance recalled seeing her, quote, rub cold water on the belly of a wild wolf to cool it so the animal could be moved to another site for release.
Oh, look at
that. And there's even a wildlife refuge in Alaska named after her, the Mollie Beattie Wilderness, which includes a total of 8 million acres and is managed by Fish and Wildlife. And it's like up in the northeast corner of Alaska.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, so she like obviously did a lot of stuff and was very well, respected. They said in the Washington Post obituary, it said that even senators and Congress people who didn't agree with her policies were working together to get that wilderness name for her after she passed. So, or maybe when they knew she was going to pass, or whatever, based on her accomplishments up to that point.
Yeah.
So I have a couple interesting quotes I wanted to share. So back to the obit, the Washington Post wrote that in her last, this is quoting from directly from them to make it make sense. So it says, in her last major speech as director of Fish and Wildlife Service, she recalled how she released Hope, a rehabilitated bald eagle, into the wild to mark the change in the species status from endangered to threatened. That day was one of the highlights of her career, and she recorded the event in a journal under the heading, quote, "Is this a great job or what?"
Aww.
And
cool.
Yeah, and she's also known for a few of her quotes about just environmental issues. For instance, when she first came into the Fish and Wildlife Service, she announced that, quote, "The service will shift to an ecosystem approach to managing our fish and wildlife resources, emphasizing that people use natural ecosystems for many purposes, and if we do not take an ecosystem approach to conserving biodiversity, none of those uses will be long-lived." And then she also has another quote, "When Americans are asked what the most pressing environmental issues are, they cite pollution issues such as toxic waste and clean water, problems like loss of biodiversity, rapid depletion of natural resources, and the international problems of population explosion are way down the list. And yet these are the issues that are of greatest importance to the long-term health of our world." She's even been quoted as saying things such as, even if no jobs are saved by conservation efforts, it doesn't matter, because without those conservation efforts, our world will just like collapse into itself. And this was, again, keep in mind, this is like in the mid-90s. Like this is not recent or new. Like this, and that certainly was controversial at the time.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't common thought. Yeah.
No, and it probably would be today too, just because as someone who's taken some environmental law classes, what comes up a lot is like if you are talking to somebody who lives in a neighborhood that has lead in their water, that's their priority, is fixing their water. They're not going to be thinking about the national park, wildlife coming back or whatever.
Yeah.
But her point is we have to think about all of these things. It's all interconnected. And then I thought I had in my notes why I want to talk about her. So I only recently learned about her, and it was when I was trying to find somebody to write about for this podcast, as we all were texting, like whenever that was, a week or two ago.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think about like why, and it was a whole like articles like that I shared, I think, with all of you, that was like a list of like several women and
animal
activists. And one of them was Carol Baskin.
I know, right? Tiger King.
So we had a very brief discussion about including her, and I think we could have had enough to talk about her, even because that was before Tiger King. That was like a year ago. It was like 2019. So it talked about her big cat rescue in that article. But back to Mollie Beattie. She was on that list as well, and I thought she was like really interesting. And so when I was going through, my research about her and trying to find just what she was about, one of the things maybe is that picture I showed you where she's wearing the hip waders, and I don't know if you all noticed, but there's like a bear in the background. I'll show the picture again.
Yeah,
before.
I couldn't tell if it was like a bear or a moose, but I'm like, that is a big animal.
It's a bear, and I don't know where and you know what? I was trying to sort of figure out, like, I'm guessing it was taken in the Alaska Refuge, but it could have been taken at any park that's managed by Fish and Wildlife, I suppose. But yeah, but there's that bear just in the background. So one thing that I liked about that, so it kind of reminds me of Into the Wild, where there's like his pictures of just wilderness and thinking about what that must be like to have a job where I'm sure she did spend time behind a desk at some point, but just to have that kind of life where like she's
probably of like office and wilderness
and like she said in her quote of, is this a great job or what, like, because she's releasing a bald eagle back into the wild. I mean, like, I don't know, I can only imagine what that would feel like.
I made like eye contact with a bald eagle once in a zoo, and I'm like, I feel so American right now. Like it was weird. It just like locked eyes with me. It probably wanted to kill me, but I felt
maybe.
I mean, like the bald eagles are like weirdly cool.
Yeah. So I can't. Yeah. So it's like I can't imagine just having the kind of job where that's like just one part of her job, and then also now, like, thinking about how all these parks are closed right now, so we can't even go to where that picture was taken unless we like live there already. So maybe it just was making me like miss being able to go out in the outdoors more. And I was trying, like, before everybody else got on the Zoom call earlier, I was trying to hang up a national parks poster behind me. It was too big and too heavy to stay up, but yeah.
See, well, you know what? Get that up at a later time for you.
Yeah,
so you have that
like it's
feel of the outside.
It's from the one the Idle Jorg. This was a few years ago. They did an exhibit on Grand Canyon, and so it's a Charlie Harper. Is that the artist name?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Who does a lot of like geometric animals, and did a whole like, I think he did like a whole series of U.S. Parks. And so it's canyon country. So it's like meant to like combine like the Grand Canyon and some of the other canyony places down in the Southwest. So anyway, so that's something maybe I've just been thinking more about, like, okay, when we're done with this, what's something I've been wanting to do and haven't actually done. And maybe it is like finally doing that like cross country road trip of national parks. And it's also sad that they're closed, but I also understand because people aren't always very responsible about things, and so they might not know if you go in, you gotta take out your trash and
gotta clean up after yourself.
And I think people weren't doing, like, I read an article about it, and so people weren't doing that even like during the government shutdown, whenever that was, a year or two ago, when they had fewer people. So it's like you really can't trust them right now. But and then I've also, I think maybe I mentioned this already, like, I think it's just really interesting to how animals are coming back into those parks in certain areas of the parks where people normally would be. So I'm hopeful that when we come back into whatever our new normal is going to be, that we can, we as people can keep in mind, like, the animals are supposed to be there too. Like, that's part of why these parks exist, is for their benefit as much as ours, to be able to see them and take pictures and have those memories. But
nature got to heal a little bit, you know what I mean? At the same time, like, we weren't poking it with sticks for a little bit.
So I'm not mad. And it said, like, one article I was reading said that, like, I don't remember, like, so many like bears and coyotes like just get hit by cars because of tourists. And it was a pretty high number. Like, it was shocking, like, how high that number was. 'Cause, like, but now that they don't have cars right now, they can kind of wander, and they've been seeing more bears and more, predators that normally kind of hide out. So, I mean, obviously they're predators, so you got to watch out for them.
Right, exactly, yeah.
You can't, like, but at the same time, it's like it's their land too. So I'm just looking through my show notes just to make sure that there's nothing else I missed.
Gotcha. Katie or Bonnie, did you have
Broccoli,
any questions while she's looking over Steve?
That question, I remember there's some kind of article about during the COVID. I think what was it, like goats or just wildlife just taking back over towns because people haven't been out and about. But I think it was just specifically like goats were just like roaming the streets or something.
Did you see the picture of the lions laying in the middle of the road?
No. Where was that?
I don't even know. It was one of those that I was like just scrolling through my Facebook feed. But
We haven't seen the Noblesville Puma yet.
no,
Sorry,
it's
that's
gotta
Katie
be
and I's
coming.
like urban legend of the Noblesville
It's gotta
Puma.
be coming. I'm
There-
gonna start.
There
There
is no
could
Noblesville
be.
Puma.
There, I don't know. I wouldn't be so sure. Like Matt and I are convinced that there are wildcats that we
Oh yeah.
don't know about because they're secretive. I don't, maybe not a cougar, but was that the one that was on the news where the guy's like, I saw a cougar and he
Yeah.
didn't have any pictures or any evidence of it, but he was insistent.
He was
I saw a
very
cougar.
insistent. Yeah.
It was a cougar, and they like went to his house and talked to him just talking about it. And I thought, is this really
Yeah.
like what is happening
Well,
here?
the funny thing with Noblesville is there is coyotes. They usually do hang out in the cemetery kind of over by Katie and I's house. So
Okay.
I mean, I think Katie and I always go with, yeah, sure, it's just a coyote or a big dog. I mean, it's not a puma. But the
Yeah.
creativity
Urban
went.
legend.
Yeah. We wanted it to be true though.
Yeah. Like a puma.
Well, yeah, because we've seen coyotes like when I'm riding my bike on a trail near my house. Once we saw a coyote like cross in front of us, like around
Yeah.
this time of day, we're recording around dusk, so it's like that's their hunting hours, and we'll hear them every once in a while. And then people on the neighborhood Facebook will see them like by the like the creek by our neighborhood, but
yeah, I mean they're normal to the area.
yeah.
Exactly. Did you find anything else in your notes?
I don't think so. Well, I found the quote, one of the quotes I meant to say earlier,
Yeah.
where she says, okay, even if not a single job were created, wildlife must be conserved, and the diversity of natural systems must remain integral and whole because we humans are linked to those systems, and it is in our immediate self-interest to care about them. She iterated that in any frame greater than the short term, the economy and the environment are identical considerations. And I guess that's something else I'll mention to you. Like, obviously, when those parks are open, they are very big money makers. And so that's, again, finding that balance. And I was trying to find the snail. When you guys were talking, I was looking up snail cats.
Like,
It just, the article I found,
cats.
yeah, the article just said like why snails were in those illustrated manuscripts, but didn't really give me an answer I was looking for.
They're
So
like,
anyway, so I'll go. Yeah, I'll go ahead and share. I want to share her picture again if I can get it to.
Good old Mollie.
Yeah, because I just thought she was so cool, and I was so glad I got a chance to
and a
share her
trailblazer
with
too.
other people. Yeah, a trailblazer and
the bears.
Just
Wow.
that's the bear. That's not bad.
Did she ever talk about any kind of discrimination she faced in the field?
See, that's what I couldn't.
So male dominated, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't like specifically find that. Like that's what I was trying to find, like what it would have been like to be a woman in that field.
Yeah.
One thing that might be why she didn't talk about it, even though I'm gonna guess it was there, or I'll assume it was there. I don't know for sure, but is that it was like because of the time, like because she died while she was still in the field.
Right.
I don't know that she would have really wanted to go there as far as you know what I mean, like as far as like saying anything bad or negative about the people she was working with, because
she was still in the job. Yeah,
and so I was wondering that as I was reading this, like, okay, a couple of things. One, had she done that job under Clinton, and then like when his presidency ended, or she just moved on, or whatever, however that normally works when people because of political affiliation or whatever, would she have maybe written something about it later? Or because the internet was so dang new in that time frame that it's not like she would have had like a Medium page or a Twitter or something, like a platform like that to be able to just say, I did find, like, I found a couple articles she had written, but they were both like academic journal articles about conservation issues, not
Mhm.
about workplace. So yeah, so I know I did look for that because I was thinking about what that would have been like to be her in that time in that job. So I'm yeah, and that's why I said I was like kind of surprised to see that people were um, in agreement with her policies, and I wondered if
It's very cool.
because yeah, and I was thinking like, well, maybe like because she was a woman, maybe people would be like, I don't trust her, she doesn't speak for the industry, whatever. But I think I was also reading another article a few days ago about her that was saying um, that she was also like the person who would go and put out fires when, like, say someone was like, oh, this project is being held up because of these blah 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 environmentalists, federal environmentalists aren't letting us do this because of Endangered Species Act. Like, she was the one who would kind of go in and explain, no, actually what you're talking about, it was halted for other reasons, have nothing to do with environmental policies, and you need to
She'd
talk
kind of
to
be the
the
peacemaker then, and the voice
yeah
of reason. Yeah.
yeah, and for her to have been able to, what did I say, like negotiate like 100 private landowner contracts or deals or whatever they
Yeah.
were with federal government, like that's huge. Like I can't imagine getting that many people on board with, with something like this. So
Sounds like she's a very educated referee to it. You know what I mean? To
yeah,
really make it super simple, because she was way more than that. But
right,
she knew what she was talking about and could and really talk to people about it in a way that made sense and was approachable. It got stuff done.
right. Oh, now I'm turning into Violet from Charlie the Chocolate Factory. What is
Don't
going
turn into a
on?
blueberry.
I'm turning into a blueberry. I don't even know where this blue is coming from. This is so
It's got to be the
weird.
screen.
I
Yeah.
guess that's so strange. Well, this is what I'm going to look like the rest of our recordings, so get used to it. I would put on like a little bit of lipstick to make my
You're like,
face have a little color, and now I just look like a blueberry. Oh well, I tried. But yeah, so that's my one cool gal. I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something, and
Yeah.
I enjoyed getting to know more and more about Miss Mollie Beattie, and hopefully I did her some justice in that, and it was just, yeah, but it was really sad. Like, it's kind of like a Bonnie. It was like sad that it was like, oh, this is so cool, she was like the first woman, and I'm like, oh dang it, she
That
died
footed
like,
back.
yeah, like
Yeah.
3 years after she got this like really awesome
Yeah.
position that I actually, you know what, I didn't look up to see if there have been other women in that role.
Gotcha. We can put it in show notes. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
definitely opened a door. So
yeah, yeah, for
fantastic. Well, do you
sure.
want to wrap us up, darling?
So let me find what I'm supposed to say.
Find the magic sentence.
Yeah. So, well, that wraps it up for this week. Join us next week as our next gal pal shares her one cool animal thing as Gal's Guide to the Galaxy podcast continues. Thanks for listening.
For show notes, links, and images from this week's show, visit galsguide.org. Want exclusive stuff like deleted bits and major bloopers? Become a Gals Guide patron today. Thanks for listening.